Welcome to Veteran Resource Podcast, where you will meet nonprofit organizations focused on improving the lives of veterans and their family members. Here is your host, Jeremy Paris.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 17 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Paris, and on this week's episode, we have Ann Doerflinger from American Gold Star Mothers. It's going to be a great interview, but before we get into that, I wanted to read over a couple more of the reviews that came in. Shaq says, great resource. Finding these podcasts informative and entertaining. Keep them coming. And Greek Fire 15 says, fantastic, even for civilians. I heard great things about this podcast from an acquaintance and went ahead and gave it a shot, even though I'm not a veteran. I just happened to choose Jamie's episode. It was the work of the divine. Due to health, I didn't make it into the Air Force like I wanted, and Code of Support was exactly what I want to get involved with. Her interview was so great, and she, like myself, wanted to do something to show appreciation to our warriors, so unlike me, she did something about it. Now I can too. I'm telling all of my service friends and even some other civilians like myself who just want to do what we can to show our love to vets about this podcast. Absolutely love it. And Dan from Rental Income Podcast says, incredible show. Jeremy has an amazing resource with this podcast. Such great information on every episode. Keep up the great work. Thank you so much for these reviews. I love getting them. And if you have not left a review yet, I invite you to go over to veteranpodcast.com/iTunes, where you can leave a review, and I'll be reading it on a future episode of the show. Now, before we get into the meat of the show, I also wanted to make a very quick announcement. My good friend Josh Davidson, also a fellow veteran, has opened up a new antique store over in Chester, Maryland. And inside that antique store, I have a booth set up for veteran art. I have some local veterans, really amazing artists, and I have their artwork all in there for sale. So make sure that you go and check out Josh's new store. It's exposedtreasures.com, and I will also be posting some pictures up on the Facebook site, so you can go and check those out at facebook.com/Veteran Resource Podcast. Okay, Ann Doerflinger grew up in Washington State. Following her graduation from the University of Chicago, she and her husband Richard moved to the Washington, D.C. area, where they raised their 4 children. The second of those children, Thomas, joined the Army infantry in 2002 and was deployed to Iraq in October of 2004. In November of that year, he was killed during combat operations in Mosul. In the nearly 11 years since then, Ann has worked on veteran issues in Montgomery County and has been an active member of the Maryland chapter of American Gold Star Mothers and is the immediate past chapter president. All right, let's jump right into the interview with Ann. Ann, welcome to the Veteran Resource Podcast. How are you doing today?
Oh, I'm doing fine, Jeremy. Thank you. How are you?
I'm doing outstanding.
Great.
So I wanted to find out a little bit more about you, but before we do that, can you give me a brief description of what the American Gold Star Mothers is?
American Gold Star Mothers is an organization of mothers who have lost a child who has been on active military duty. Can be either, combat death or illness or accident or suicide, sadly. That is what a Gold Star Mother is. Our organization is a group that brings in those moms and is dedicated to serving veterans and also active duty military and their families. And at the same time, healing while we serve. We support each other because it is a very difficult thing to have lost a child who was on military service. So we are supportive of one another and of our other military members.
Okay, and I'm going to be digging in a little bit more to find out everything I can about American Gold Star Mothers in just a minute. But before we do, I wanted to kind of go back and learn a little bit more about you. So can you give me a little bit of your backstory?
Well, my story started about, really on 9/11. My son Thomas was a senior in high school, and He had already expressed some interest in joining the military. When 9/11 happened, he was a little more inspired. And by the end of his senior year, he had signed up. He joined the Army. He went active duty in July of 2002 and then went off to basic training in October of 2002. Eventually, he was assigned to Fort Lewis in the infantry. Fort Lewis is in Washington State. And as I pointed out to him, he ended up being stationed 30 miles from where I ended up. I had graduated from high school. So I was like, I had made my way across the United States to Maryland, and there he was back in Washington again. But it was familiar, and it was kind of nice for us because I did have family out there and friends. And so there was always a way to go visit. And he had resources off post if he wanted to go away for a weekend. He had places to go. Thomas was actually assigned to a Stryker brigade. He learned how to drive the Stryker vehicles, which are armored personnel carriers on wheels that work better in desert sand. So he was trained to do that. And we all laughed because he didn't get his driver's license until 30 days before he left for basic training.
Oh, wow.
He really did not like driving. So, of course, the Army made him a driver. But he did well. And the guys we met, they loved him. You know, they went off to Iraq in October of 2004. They actually left a couple of days before they'd expected to, which I guess is kind of standard practice for the Army, that you either go before you thought you were going to or 3 days afterwards. But he would call us from Iraq. He would call in the middle of the night because he was really, really bad at time zones. And he would forget that we would be asleep. But he called us probably 3 or 4 times from Iraq. He sent us email, didn't really say much about what they were doing. And as far as I could tell from his what he was telling us, they were sitting around, waiting for something to happen. Although, as we later found out, they'd been in combat basically from the day they got to Mosul until the day he died. Thomas actually was killed on Veterans Day, November 11th of 2004. He was not driving that day. His vehicle had already been damaged in combat, and it was in for repair. So he had volunteered to take a position that was basically guarding people in a dismount operation, and he was hit by a sniper. He was the only casualty that day, the only American casualty. And
Wow.
yeah, so we knew within a few hours, which, you think about the people in World War II or World War I, people would get telegrams. It'd be days, maybe they wouldn't know for months that their loved one had been killed. But we knew within, I think about 7 hours what had happened. And I don't know if that was a blessing or a curse, but we were able to hold his funeral 8 days later. He had told us before he left what he wanted if anything happened. And people always look at me like, you've got to be kidding. But no, he gave us complete instructions, actually. While I was standing in the hallway clutching a laundry basket, he said he did not want to be buried in Arlington. He preferred to be buried in the local cemetery. And I'm looking at him like, you've got to be kidding. And he said he didn't want to be in uniform. He told us that he had signed a 5-year contract with the Army, and if he died, then the contract was over and eternity belonged to him. So he preferred to be buried in civilian clothing. And I was like, okay, just don't make me do it. And of course, that was out of his hands. So he deployed, they deployed in October, and he was gone by, before mid-November. So we did hear from various members of his unit afterwards. People wrote us, a couple of guys wrote us letters. His first sergeant actually wrote us a letter. His first sergeant wrote us a letter, and then himself was killed a few days later. So
Oh, wow.
by the time we got the letter, he'd already been wounded, and he died of his wounds, actually, I guess 2 weeks after we got the letter. So I met his widow and his children, and because he was buried here at Arlington. So it was a difficult, as you can imagine, it was a terrible experience. And because it was relatively early in the conflict, I think Thomas was maybe like number 1,258 or 57, somewhere in there. There were not that many families, and it was actually felt very lonely. Not that I wanted anyone else to lose their child, but there was no one to talk to. So that was a very tough time. And as I know, Tracy Miller, we finally met about 6 months later at a reception that the governor of Maryland held for families. And that was a blessing.
Tracy is a wonderful soul.
She is a wonderful, wonderful person. So yes, It was a lifesaver. And then eventually I made contact with another Gold Star mother whose son had been at Fort Lewis, and had also been a striker soldier. He died in an accident, but the mom called me and we were able to finally connect. The one big problem for families, at least at that point, was privacy laws kept us from finding each other. I mean, if you were really good, you probably could dig up addresses and phone numbers from, online somewhere, but there was no official way for us to meet each other. And it made it very difficult sometimes because we just felt so isolated.
Right. I mean,
Um,
that's a terrible thing for anybody to have to go through, and to have to go through it alone, I can imagine it is just compounding.
it was very hard. So when I finally met Tracy and the other families, it was a relief.
And
It
were
really,
you all part of American Gold Star Mothers at that point, or you
no,
weren't?
no,
Okay.
no. Our chapter really did not form until 2007. There was a mom whose son was killed in 2006, Carol Roddy. When her son was killed, she wanted to join American Gold Star Mothers, which is a national organization with local chapters. Every state has chapters, I think, at this point. But when she contacted the national organization, they told her that Maryland didn't currently have a chapter, but would she like to form it? And so, yeah, which is always what happens when you volunteer. I think when you point out a need, somebody always points out that you would be the perfect person to fulfill
Of
that need.
course.
So,
Of course.
yeah, so Carol luckily was up for the challenge, and she actually contacted Senator Mikulski, who was able to send letters to all the families. And that way, Carol was able to organize a meeting with all of the moms. American Gold Star Mothers has requirements for the mothers. I can't remember all of them right offhand, but basically it was that your child had died during active military duty. So she knew that Senator Mikulski would be able to reach those, would have access to the names and the addresses of the families, and she did. Dr. or Senator Mikulski did send letters out on Carol's behalf, and Carol was able to organize our first meeting in June, I think, of 2007, near her home up in northern Maryland. And so that was our beginning. We elected officers and made her president, and
Hmm.
we started. The first thing we got sort of organized, and then we started. Well, one of the things we did initially was packing care packages for people who were still on active duty overseas. So we'd bring stuff, personal items, and we'd have our meeting, and the dads would sit in the other room and put all these boxes together of all the things we had collected. So it was great. And there were, began to be functions and things, events that we'd be invited to. So that also became part of our mission.
Okay,
Uh,
Leanne, wanted to take a step back a little farther, and
okay.
this organization has been around for a long time. How
Yes.
did it originally get started?
It did grow out of World War One. Grace Darling Siebold was a mother whose son George had volunteered to fly for the RAF as an American in the Royal Air Force. George was shot down. Body was never recovered, but his mother would go to the hospitals and visit the wounded, hoping to find her son among them. But along the way, she realized that she was, getting comfort from, visiting the wounded and visiting their families. And she banded together with some other mothers who were doing the same thing. Of course, her son was never found. George was eventually declared killed in action, and his effects were returned to his family. But out of that grew this organization. It did take them a little bit. Gold Star Moms were actually chartered, I think, in January of 1929. And one of the things that people find very puzzling about us, we wear white. When we go to official events, we always wear all white.
Hmm.
And people, it is kind of funny because those of us of a certain generation associate this white with nurses, but I'm finding now the younger ones don't so much. But it is easy to find us. If we're at an event and we're all dressed in our white suits or white, or sometimes more casual clothing, then you can tell who we are, and that these are the moms who have lost a child. But the white is meant to be a more joyful symbol. It was a more hopeful color than black. I mean, people used to wear black all the time when they were mourning, but the white was kind of a reaction to that. It just let us wear white as a symbol of hope and of growth.
Right. I like that.
Yeah.
And
So
I noticed that there was a distinction between Gold Star mothers and American Gold Star mothers.
right.
And I want
So
to kind of go over that a little bit.
right. So any family that has lost a family member in military service is a Gold Star family. It's not. It's kind of a. I guess it is semi-official. The Department of Defense will give the families the next of kin will get a pin. Those who lost a family member in combat had their Gold Star is on a purple field, and then the other deaths they have the Gold Star on a gold field, and it's a small little lapel pin, but it's a designation. Actually, there's a lot of information about that online if people want to go look for the Gold Star pins. Just Google that, and they'll find a whole series of public service announcements about the meaning of the pins. But every family that's lost a member in military duty is a Gold Star family. The American Gold Star Mothers actually organized itself or became an organization, a chartered organization. So we actually have membership dues and we have bylaws, and you have to actively join. You don't automatically become a member. You have to decide that this is something you want to do. The nice thing about it, the good thing about it for the moms is that it's support for each other. We do service. That's part of our mission is to be a veteran service organization. But we grow with each other. We support each other as we grieve, because as it turns out, you don't ever really stop grieving. You continue to mourn, and that's goes on for the rest of your life. So, but we support each other. Yeah.
And what other types of programs do you guys do?
Every chapter is a little different. So
Okay.
it's responsive to local needs or to local, events. So here in Maryland, of course, we have Walter Reed as the hospital here, and we have the Wounded Warrior unit as well. So we can, at Building 62. So we've actually done a fair amount of visiting there. We do it usually in partnership with other groups. So we have done that with the Patriot Guard Riders of Maryland. They handed out kitchen supplies and supplies for the people living in the apartments as they recover, go through occupational and physical therapy, and families come, and there's always some need that it's good to fulfill. So some material need, and we visit with those people. A lot of our members volunteer. This is part of our thing, is that we volunteer in our community. So actually we have a couple of moms who volunteer for the Red Cross at Walter Reed. We have moms who do other service for other organizations. Often we will just join with a group. Our chapter currently meets at an American Legion post in Laurel, Maryland, and that American Legion post does things with McVet in Baltimore, which is a program for homeless veterans, and we join with them sometimes in serving those guys at McVet and women also as well at McVet in Baltimore. So we do a lot of. We don't do a lot of sustained programs because we aren't a very big organization. It would be hard for us to have an ongoing program. But we join. We have our partners and we join with them. Last year we actually went with them to Charlotte Hall, and we had made blankets out of fleece, and sort of with military the military insignia on these blankets, and they handed them out to the female veterans, and they loved them. So it was a lot of fun because these were nice and warm and cozy, and they could just sort of snuggle down into them.
Yeah.
A lot of these people they just loved having company come by and say hello and just leave them with a small gift. And that is kind of what we specialize in. So
you guys have all really become pretty close friends then, all of the people in your organization, or in your chapter, I should say.
Our chapter, yeah, we have a pretty active core, probably 15 or 20 moms who are able to come to our meetings and get to a lot of events. Now, sometimes moms can't get to the meetings because they're just too far away. Because we're a statewide chapter, we can't, it would be impractical for somebody who lives in Western Maryland, for instance, or on the Eastern Shore to come to our meetings. So,
right.
But we do keep in touch. We have, we use email copiously. I can't imagine doing this without email. I am so glad we have the ability to correspond electronically. But we do that, and if an event is taking place in a town that's closer to you that you feel you can get to or you're really interested in, then you can come, even if you never get to the meetings. You're still on the membership rolls. We have, I think, about 60 or 70 moms on our membership rolls, including some Vietnam-era moms. So,
Oh, wow.
yeah, so those moms don't get out very much anymore, but they're there and they're still part of us. So, yeah, we do. We try to include everybody as much as we can, and nobody gets left out. Now, one of the things that the national organization asked us to do this year was to make sure we had some observance of the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam conflict. So we've kind of partnered a little bit with the Vietnam Veterans of America chapter in Baltimore, and of course we've honored our Vietnam mom, our Edith Knapp, who has very faithfully come to our meetings. And Edith actually had been part of the earlier incarnation of our chapter. So she was really helpful when we started up again, reminding us what procedures were and the rituals and, what kinds of things we could be doing to be of aid. So yeah, she's great. And she is still with us. So
That's great.
yeah. And one of the other things I did, there was a chaplain in Vietnam, Father Vincent Capodanno, who every year there's a memorial mass for him, the National Shrine of the Immaculate Conception in D.C. And so I attended that as, wearing my white. And Father Capodanno's family is still with us. So he was a Medal of Honor winner, I believe. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, so it's that was in honor of him. So we've done other things, wreath layings at the Vietnam Veterans Wall with national organizations. So, some of it's memorialization. It's not just that we are serving the living, but we are also honoring the dead and remembering their sacrifice.
And you answered one of my questions I was going to ask a little bit later about whether or not you team up with other veteran-focused nonprofit organizations. And it sounds like you do.
We do try, because we are stronger when we are paired with other groups.
Right.
They have bigger resources and sometimes better ideas. I like that we are able to do this together. So yeah, we've done this with the American Legion. We've done it with PGR. We've done it, the whole Macbeth thing. We've actually done a little bit on our own with them. And actually this coming fall, I don't know whether this is sort of interesting. There are two events coming up that we are, I know you were going to ask me this later, but if you don't mind, I'll go ahead and do this now.
Yeah.
But yeah, in Southern Maryland, at the end of August, there will be a Habitat for Humanity fundraiser to rebuild a veterans home. And we'll be volunteering at that. There's a 5K fundraise, which I'm trying to figure out whether I'm ambitious enough to go out and run that as opposed to handing out water this year.
Oh, that sounds great. You should totally do it.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. But we went last year. It was a great event. It was, just a lot of just so heartwarming, all those American flags. I loved it. And then also in the southern, I guess not really Southern Maryland, but in Chesapeake Beach in September, our chapter will be holding we have an annual fundraiser. We've done it for the last several years anyway. We've held a crab feast to raise our funds to make the purchases and do the things that we, make the donations that we want to give. So, but we've done that the last 2 years. We're doing it again this September. And one of the things about this that we realized is that it's a great outreach because we've used it not just to raise funds, but also to educate our families and friends and neighbors about what Gold Star mothers are. And that's really been a great thing to do. This year, we're doing it at American Legion Hall. Last year, we did it at a VFW. So we're equal opportunity.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
You should reach out to Team Red, White, and Blue for the 5K. They're big time into that.
Yep, they are. We're kind of aware of them. And, as individuals, we do a lot of volunteering as well as, at the VA hospitals, also at Walter Reed. But One thing that I personally have done the last few years is serve as kind of a representative of Gold Star moms, but also sort of as the community to a veterans collaborative here in Montgomery County. With just an organization. It's not really even an organization. Just every other month we meet. A bunch of nonprofits meet and share and network about what they do, and people make connections about. People get volunteers. The Gold Star moms have benefited from this as well. So it's been great. We do a lot of a lot of networking that way. So and actually the collaborative out of that, or out of the same impulse, grew a program called Serving Together, which has a great list of online resources for veterans and active duty, for people who are in need of help, educational, financial, just general, information about coping with life as a civilian after being a veteran, after being active duty. It's there are a lot of resources out there, and that's part of what I like to do is make sure people know that they're there.
Right.
So
I can hear you there. That's exactly what I'm trying to do as well, is try to get the word out that
I thought that figure fit really well with your mission as well. I was like, oh wait, isn't this kind of what I've been doing too?
Yeah, every single week I meet new people that I turn on to the podcast, and every time I keep hearing the same thing over and over again. I never knew that these organizations were out there. And
there are thousands of them across the country.
Exactly.
At one point, somebody said that since 9/11, there have been like 9,000 nonprofits formed, and that was a couple of years ago. So I'm sure there are more.
Yeah, it's up there. It's up there.
Yeah, just small groups that want to help and can. It just
Strength in numbers.
There are strength in numbers, but I love the whole local feel to this. I like the fact that my chapter of Gold Star Mothers can be totally local while still having this national background. That all of us are out there. Every chapter does something a little bit differently. So
yeah, that is really good too. That you can have your local organization, but then you can also learn from each other.
Exactly.
What's working, what's not working.
Right. What really is appreciated and what they could probably do without, but socks always seem to be popular, though, I have to say.
Can't go wrong with socks.
You can't go wrong with socks. So,
and so before we get into the final three questions, I just wanted to kind of go into, for a new member, you mentioned that Senator Mikulski originally got you guys started, got the chapter going again by connecting all of the Gold Star mothers together. Is that still the standard method for Gold Star mothers to come into your organization, or do you reach out to them in different ways?
We have been trying to reach out to people. I have to say, with the appearance of Facebook and opening Facebook to everybody, we have been able to reach people much more easily. So a lot of folks are on Facebook. And I think maybe the parents of younger people often get on Facebook so they can continue to correspond with their children. So,
right.
Yeah. So when my son was killed, it was before Facebook was open to everybody. I think it was still a college only. It's hard to remember that was true, but
I know, right?
It was only college students who could use it. But then in the last, probably a few years later, whenever it became more public, it got so much simpler for everyone to reach each other. And now if we see that there's a loss in our state, we kind of keep an eye out and we try to contact the family one way or the other. Sometimes we can do it, sometimes it's at the funeral, but hopefully not. But sometimes we're just able to do it more casually by the Facebook contact or email, or there's some other intermediary we can use. But we've gotten much better at finding each other, I have to say.
And do you have a Facebook group?
We do. The Maryland Gold Star Mothers have a Facebook group. So, and American Gold Star Mothers, the national organization as well, have a Facebook page. So anybody can go to those pages and see what we're up to. We try to keep that up to date. And as you know, our Maryland Gold Star Mothers have a website as well, MarylandGoldStarMoms.com. So
Excellent.
you can go there and see what we're doing and find out about our crab feast. And I'm always plugging our crab feast. And, but we do have photographs from a lot of the events we've been to, things we've been service, where we've been doing service projects, or things where we've been honored, or where we've participated as speakers, which we will do as well. We are, a number of us are very happy to do public speaking. So we're always really happy to spread the word.
Great.
So there are ways now of finding us, and moms have found us. I have to say the last 2 mothers who've joined our chapter, though, were transfers from other states. So, they had moved in the meantime. So, which they had already, one came from California. It was like, wow.
Wow.
And one moved down from Pennsylvania. So, those moms have joined us. They knew about Gold Star Mothers, and they just contacted National and found out where we were, and
great.
joined up. Yeah. So they've had that fellowship too. And it's important, to move somewhere to feel like there are people who understand what you've been through. So.
Right. That's a great support group. For just moving into the area. You don't know what's around or how to get help, and you guys are there. Yeah.
Yeah. We tried very hard, and we are accessible to each other by email, as I said, and phone, and a lot of texting. It's interesting. We're a lot of really dedicated texters in our group. So.
And I was curious, one last thing before we get into the final 3. For a Gold Star mother that's coming into your organization, they're joining your chapter, could you kind of walk me through what they can expect, how it normally works?
It's really very simple and very straightforward. There is an application process. I think most of our moms actually went through the national group. Their website has an application that you can print out and fill out. It sort of asks, who you are, where you live, and the circumstances of your child's death and who it was. And we do have to, it's been so long since I joined, I can't really remember now what documentation I had to provide, but basically that, and then that gets sent to the president of the chapter, who will contact the potential member, and basically it's pay your $30 of dues or whatever it is at this point. It's pretty minimal, and that supports the chapter and the national organization, and that's it. Every chapter does this slightly differently or meets differently. Now in Maryland, we just found that meeting every other month works well for us. We can conduct our business,
Okay.
Work out our ideas, reconnect with each other. This past year, we often adjourned afterwards and had lunch together and sat around and just had more informal conversation.
Nice.
It works out. It's a great way to get to know each other better, and when we're not just talking about how we're going to spend our budget or how divide up our time.
Right.
Other groups just do service projects. There's a chapter that never meets because they're too far apart. So they do all their business by email, and they show up at their events, and whoever's local to the event. So
interesting.
As I said, every state is different. So it has been very interesting. Delaware just recently reformed their chapter. So they form a department with us. We're kind of grouped together in the American Gold Star Mothers organization. So we do meet a little bit together. We try to do a few things together. So
that's good.
Yeah. So it is really, it's while being very national, it's also just got a very local flavor to it. So
the best of both worlds.
I hope so. I hope so. But we try to make it easy for moms to find us. For a long time, it wasn't that easy, but we're trying to raise our visibility with that Facebook page and with our website. So
that's great. And I will make sure that I put links to the Facebook page and the website in the show notes to make it really easy for people to find.
Oh, thank you very much. That would be great.
Okay.
Because I know there are other moms out there, but maybe they're going to be shy. That's the other thing. People are a little bit shy of meeting a bunch of moms who've lost a child, but
Right.
it's okay.
And it's a lot easier for somebody that is shy to approach you over Facebook and start a
Right.
conversation. And then I've known this to be the same for myself. I'll start talking to somebody over Facebook, and before you know it, we're really good friends and we're hanging out in real life.
Right.
But it all starts kind of timidly over Facebook, just kind of
Yep.
chatting. Hey, we have some similar interests. Let's talk.
Yes. Yes, exactly. So, yeah. So I hope that we can be, that will be attractive to those moms who need that companionship. I just strongly feel that you shouldn't be alone in this.
Right.
You need other people. It was never so clear to me. I am an introvert, but this really taught me I do need those people. I need them to heal, to learn, to grow, and then reaching out to other people is very healing to you as well. So
Absolutely.
anyway, yeah.
All right, Leanne, I think we are ready to get into the final 3 questions.
Okay.
Are you
let's
ready?
see if I hope so.
Okay, question number 1. Who would you like to hear on a future episode of the Veteran Resource Podcast?
So I was thinking about this a little bit, and there are a bunch of categories of groups. There are people, there are people who do service dogs, there are people who do service, there are athletics. I think one group I'd really like to know more about what they do locally. I've just kind of admired their work from afar is Team Rubicon.
Team Rubicon, yes, absolutely.
I just have thought they had a terrific idea for the guys who were able to go out, and women, of course, who were able to go out and, wield those chainsaws. Do that work in disaster relief. I'd like to know, what we have going locally for them. I'd really like to know more about them as an organization and as people.
I do have to admit I have quite the organization crush on Team Rubicon. I love what they're doing, and
Yeah.
I would absolutely love to have them on the podcast.
Yeah. So I encourage you to do that, Jeremy.
Excellent. Okay, question number 2. What upcoming project has you fired up right now?
Well, as I said, the Habitat for Humanity event at probably Solomon's Island, I think, is the actual location. That will be at the end of August. Kind of excited about doing that. And I am excited about our crab feast and doing that outreach to Southern Maryland, just having them, getting a chance to get acquainted with them and have them get acquainted with us. They're very supportive as a community of military families, and I am looking forward to introducing them to our organization.
Excellent.
So,
Excellent.
yeah.
Okay, and the last question, which is the brain stretcher. If if you woke up tomorrow and you found out that somebody made an anonymous donation of $10 million to your organization, what would you do with it?
I think, since what we often do is make donations to other organizations, especially if we got that kind of money, that would be kind of exciting, wouldn't it? But I I actually would want to give it for research into traumatic brain injury and PTSD. I particularly am fond of the Intrepid Fallen Heroes Foundation, and because they do both research and they do therapy work with wounded warriors, and I would love to see that money spent on them. Is what I would like.
Outstanding. So for that person out there with $10 million and looking for a good place to put it, you just heard what Leanne said that she could do with it. So for that person that wants to donate the $10 million, or for anybody else out there that wanted to get in contact with you and the organization, what is the best way to do that, Leanne?
The best way is probably to go through our website. We have a contact email on there. Our Our website is MarylandGoldStarMoms.com, and I know you said you'd put that link up.
Yes, I will.
Yeah, we do have contact information there. Our current president will probably have her phone number up there as well, but we do have an email address that gets checked. So that's probably the most certain way of reaching us. Or if you are on Facebook, we also have our Maryland Gold Star Moms Facebook page as well, and we all look at it at least once a day. So if you want to reach us through that, that's good too.
Excellent. I will make sure I put information about the Facebook page on the show notes as well. And thank you so much for this interview, Leanne. This has been really informative.
Well, thank you for giving me the opportunity to share some of our organization's goals, and it's been really fun.
I really hope that there's some Gold Star mothers out there that are thinking about giving you guys a call and reaching out to you, or maybe dipping their toe in the Facebook pool to get in contact.
I hope anybody who is listening will feel free to contact us. We always welcome our moms. You know, it's not an organization we want to see grow, but if you're there, we are there for you too. So
great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you for listening to episode 17 of the Veteran Resource Podcast. If you want to get more information on the American Gold Star Mothers, you can go to the show notes page at veteranpodcast.com/017, and I will have all of the links that you need. I'll see you in episode 18.